Hi everybody. Welcome to your first real content lecture of English 101. Uh, we are in our literary semester this semester. That doesn't mean we won't do any writing. In fact, you've already done some. We'll do quite a bit, but most of our reading will be of the fiction, poetry, drama, novel variety. Last week, you read a selection of Native American folk tales, and I hope you had some fun with those. They're great read-aloud pieces if you have little brothers and sisters at home with you. You also read a poem by the Puritan colonial poet Anne Bradstreet. You had a sermon by the Puritan minister Jonathan Edwards, probably one of the most famous Christian sermons ever delivered, and a collection of slave spirituals. Those were YouTube videos so that you could listen to them. If even YouTube is too hard for you to get, you can always just simply look up those lyrics, or you can listen to them on almost any. These are public domain pieces at this point, so you could listen to them on almost any music service, Spotify, Amazon Music, anything like that, and use less of your data plan if you're having to use cell phone data in order to reach things on the internet. I asked you after you read these things to write a response paper, which is a short piece, a couple of pages probably at the most, simply responding. And one of the things I told you in your assignment for last week is that all of these pieces share at least a common preoccupation. Some of them pull against each other, but they're all thinking about a certain common keyword, and they're all clustered around that. Even where they disagree, that's where their focus lies. Now, if you determined that that keyword, that shared preoccupation, was religion, congratulations, you read my mind. Does that mean that you could not do well on your response paper without getting to that particular word? No, it does not, because we're talking about that now. You could have written a very good response paper without getting there. But if you did get there, it probably made your response paper a lot easier, because all you had to do was talk about how each of these different pieces or clusters of pieces in some way was preoccupied with the idea of religion. Now, I want to go ahead and start you in a certain way of thinking. This is what we in college call an American Lit survey. Surveys are not always in chronological order, but ours will be. So, we will spend all semester looking at movements in American literature. We start in the colonial period, or the pre-Revolutionary War period. And of course, unfortunately, we don't have enough information about Native American tribes to do an entire unit on the culture, that the very complex and sophisticated cultures that existed in North America before European settlers landed here. Hopefully someday we will, but we're really not to that point yet. We have some, and that's why we're discussing it in the same cluster. So, religion. Forgot my pen. Religion was the key word for this period. We are going to move from the pre-Revolutionary War period into the Revolutionary War period. And our next, I won't call it an entire unit, but our next cluster of readings comes next in American history chronologically. We've been in the colonial period, this is the Revolutionary period, and this selection of readings is unique, probably in the whole course of the semester, in that most of them, if not all, are nonfiction. You're going to have pieces by the founding fathers, some of Thomas Jefferson's autobiography, particularly the chunk of his autobiography that deals with the Declaration of Independence. You're going to have some writing by Ben Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was an extremely popular author during his lifetime. You're going to have a piece by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was one of the pioneers of women's rights in the U.S., and probably some other little things mixed in there. This was the American Enlightenment, and I want to start you thinking in a particular direction about how American literature and American culture developed. So, we have religion during the colonial period of different kinds. The Puritan religion was dominant among European settlers. It was not by any means the only religion, even among European settlers. But of course, that's in conflict within Christianity, and certainly with native religions, which were just as much and just as genuinely religions. So, we're going to put religion, let's say here. And I want you to think about, and we'll come back to this over and over again all semester long. I want you to think about the swinging of a pendulum, because that's what we're going to see throughout American culture. And I'm going to give you a lot of keywords for this unit, for this little mini unit, I guess. Religion is the keyword. And we have people like Anne Bradstreet, who find a great deal of comfort in their religion. And then we're going to move from that strain to Jonathan Edwards, who by all accounts at the time period was a very godly man. But you can also tell from his sermon, especially if you listen to it, also a very angry man. Now keep in mind that this period, at its peak, comes to a historical moment that we won't get to read about because our literature section is compacted a bit, and the Crucible, which a lot of your peers will be reading in their literature classes, simply too long for us to deal with and get through a couple hundred years of American literature. But you probably already know from your own studies in history where this particular religious strain is going. At its most extreme, Puritanism ends in the Salem witch trials and in similar religious persecutions, which is not for nothing exactly what the Puritans were fleeing when they left European soil to come here to begin with. So that's an irony. This pendulum is going to reach its peak about right here. This is the most extreme that the Puritan era gets to. So literally, matters of life and death. And then the pendulum is going to start to swing back. This is the American Enlightenment, which fuels the American Revolution and fuels basically the birth of the United States. Now, once again, I'm not going to tell you, other than to tell you it's another R word, and it will be R words until we get to a real watershed moment much later in history. So, you're looking for a keyword. Once again, it's just like religion last week. If you don't get to that particular word, that's not going to kill you. But if you can get to it, it's going to make your response paper easier to write. What is the key R word of the American Enlightenment or the American Revolutionary period? That's where we'll be heading in the coming week. Like I said, some of you are going to hate this period because it's It's not gonna feel like literature like you're used to. You were hoping for novels and poems and things like that. And this period is not. The American Enlightenment is extremely nonfiction. It's very political and social. But it's about the only time in the semester that we'll do this kind of writing. So if you love that, congratulations, this is your week. If you have, I think that's all I wanted to cover. Yes, indeed. Okay, if you have any questions, if you get bogged down in the middle of the week, you know where I am. You can email me, you can hit me up in Google Chats or Hangouts or whatever they're calling it these days. And of course, I have office hours several times a week online in Google Meets, or we can make special appointments in Google Meets, whatever you need to do. But you know where I am if you need me. If you get bogged down, don't hesitate to ask. Take care. Stay safe.